Fun fact, Yuumi is now the weakest support in the game. Maybe they went a little too hard on her nerfs? Nah, keep her in the garbage can. Hey Summoners, my name is Irene, and I'm here to bring you another ProGuides mid-patch update. Patch 10.13 has brought some pretty insane changes, and I want to talk about them in this video. AP Nunu is definitely not a run-it-down champion anymore, Volibear's king of the jungle, Pyke might be the strongest mid laner in the game, and I don't know what's going on anymore, and I'm sure a lot of us are lost as well. We're going to follow up on all the balance changes from the beginning of the patch and give you guys 5 new updated tier lists to work off of for the remainder of the patch. Make sure to stay tuned so we can cover your main role as well as any other secondary ones that you might play. If you're a fill player, make sure to watch the whole video, but we encourage you to do so regardless of what role you play, because you're probably going to be running into champions in all of these lanes, and if you're playing jungle, you might want to know what is going to get picked in the game. By the way, I want to let you guys know that we're doing a giveaway for 7 annual ProGuides subscriptions and a ton of ProGuides points. To have a chance at winning this prize, all you need to do is subscribe to our YouTube channel and head over to our giveaway section in the Discord. It just takes a few clicks and you're set. Finally, for our question of the day, what off-meta build do you want to see become a thing? Alternatively, what off-meta build do you miss from the past? I'm not gonna lie, I kinda miss AP Sivir. It wasn't the best, but it was definitely super fun. Her boomerang would deal a ridiculous amount of damage, and it was just so satisfying to watch it shred through opponents, even if the build was actually pretty troll. Another one that I kinda like is Sunfire Cape Evelynn back in Season 1, where you could just be invisible and stand on top of people stacking Sunfire Capes, and kill them eventually without them being able to do anything. Let me know your answers down below. Riot seems to be more open to, a lot of these builds, and I'd love to hear some of you guys' thoughts. One of the biggest nerfs this patch up there was to Ornn. Building items during the laning phase doesn't help him out nearly as much as before, and this change was aimed at specifically competitive play. Ornn's win rate dropped significantly in Challenger, but stayed about the same everywhere else. I'd say that this was definitely a successful change, but the fact stands that he's definitely not performing as well as he once was. We've moved Ornn down to the B tier in response to these nerfs because he just isn't as safe of a pick as he once was. While Ornn scaling is amazing, it feels like the current metagame heavily depends on successful transitions from early to mid-game. Gnar received a buff to his E yet again, but once again we've been let down. These buffs weren't enough and we've returned Gnar to the B tier once again. Maybe next time, little buddy. Riot has been slapping on buff after buff, but none of them are impactful enough to bring Gnar back into the meta, at least in solo queue. He's still not finding the same amount of success as he used to. And I think the E isn't the answer. Giving that thing attack speed, a lot of people don't even know it gives attack speed. They use it to get away. They don't use it to go in and then attack a bunch. Ironically though, Yorick's win rate has decreased a bit since his buff. Now while this might sound strange since he did get buffed, part of this could be because he's seeing more play than before. It's likely that since his play rate was so low in previous patches, only dedicated players and one-tricks were playing him, thus driving his win rate up. Since he received a buff this patch, this encouraged many other players to give him a try, or maybe even first time him. Sorry guys. We've also got to consider that Conqueror did get nerfed, and Yorick didn't receive any damage compensation. Thus, he's also staying in the B tier. In regards to other shifts, we've got a few we need to go over. First up, let's talk about the B tier, where we now have Aatrox and Syndra. The Conqueror nerfs hurt specific champions much more than others, and Aatrox was actually one of them. He has absolutely seen better days for sure. Aatrox stacks up Conqueror stacks a bit slower than other bruisers, so it's no surprise that his win rate was dropped. We had to move him down because of this alongside Syndra. While she did receive a nerf, this actually hurt her a lot more in the top lane than our analysts had anticipated. One of the big reasons for this is that top laners are usually a bit tankier. Not only do they have more health, they also have more health regeneration and can also build some early magic resistance. This makes it much easier for them to trade their own health for Syndra's mana. Since Syndra's mana costs have gone up, it's much harder for her to effectively bully out opponents like before. Next, Hecarim has moved up to the A tier. Ghost has been buffed on patch 10.12, and players have confidently begun using both Ghost and Ignite on him. In the same fashion as Darius, players are running double offensive summoner spells to bring out the best in these types of champions. Hecarim has been charging through the top lane leaderboard, and our analysts still think he has room to climb as he gains popularity. Quinn has also moved up from the A tier to the top of the A tier list. She's borderline S tier, but our analysts are holding off from making the shift because of her low play rate. Quinn's win rate skyrocketed to 53% this patch in Platinum and higher, and there's some easy to understand logic behind this. Conqueror was already pretty hard to stack on Quinn, as she's a ranged champion with decent disengage. Now that champions have to hit her one more time, or 2 more times if they're ranged, to finish stacking it up, she's much stronger relative to other top laners. Quinn's oppressive laning and powerful roams allow her to hard carry games by pressuring the entire map, rather than her own lane exclusively. Finally, let's run through our S Plus and S tiers. In our S Plus tier, we now have Darius, Fiora, Wukong, Garen, and Volibear. Volibear's ban rate has skyrocketed to 20%. However, this ban rate is the result of a mix between top lane as well as jungle bans, similar to the trend that we saw with Wukong right after his mini rework. Nonetheless, he's finding a ton of success and is absolutely busted right now. In our S tier, we have Mordekaiser, Kled, Jax, Urgot, Nasus, Singed, and finally, we have Maokai, who replaced Volibear's vacant apartment in the S tier when he moved up to the S+. The Tree Man didn't do anything wrong, he's just not a 2020 champion. He's arguably the best blind pick tank top laner now that Auron's been nerfed though, so if you love tanks, make sure to pick him up. That's it for the top lane, so now let's head over to the jungle next. Beginning with the jungle, let's talk about Nocturne. Unfortunately, there was actually a bug caught rather early on in the patch that was adversely affecting Nocturne's win rate. Thus, it should be slightly higher than where it's at. But that's made it a bit harder to determine just how effective the buffs he received were. For now though, we'll keep him in the B tier in spite of his win rate climbing a bit. But a champion that we can talk to you guys about, however, is Vi. Vi has moved up to the A tier, but if you're a mid to low elo player, you should definitely pick her up. Our analysts have told us that if you're between Iron and Gold, she is an S to S plus tier pick. Vi's one-dimensional jump in and hopefully kill the person she ults playstyle still prevents her from being a dominant pick in high elo, but it's a completely different story in low elo. Players that are worse have a much harder time dealing with Vi's ultimate. It's a point-and-click lockdown ability that allows her to close the gap while simultaneously dealing a decent chunk of damage. As long as you don't get cocky and tell your opponents to build a Quicksilver Sash, you're gonna do just fine with her. In fact, champions without some form of built-in escape won't get much value out of the QSS against Vi anyway. Don't be discouraged if you're a high elo player, however. Her win rate is finally in the green as it's risen 2% from last patch, putting her at 51.5%. Like our analysts thought, Warrior, Trinity Force, and Death's Dance is the go-to build, providing Vi 40% cooldown reduction, a decent amount of tankiness, and tons of damage. I'm sorry to talk so extensively about her, guys, but she is our pick of this patch, and we wanted to highlight her for you all, especially for those of you serious about climbing. Now let's talk about Nunu. Oh boy. Phase Rush AP Nunu. I'm a little scared to tell you guys about this because this might end up ruining someone's day. As long as you don't troll, don't play Disco Nunu, and you take your game seriously, AP Nunu is actually popping off in solo queue. High elo players as well as pros are experimenting with Nunu and finding a decent amount of success with him. First up, not many players are building Runic Echoes, even when they're playing AP Nunu. You still need some tankiness with him, and Cinderhulk provides incredible value as long as you build the right items. Hextech Protobelt seems pretty solid on him for the mobility, burst damage, cooldown reduction, and health though. Both Tank Nunu and AP Nunu are doing much better than before. Regardless, I do suggest experimenting with the Gathering Storm or Eyeball Collection masteries on him. They're much more valuable on him now because of how high his AP ratios are. Nunu has been moved up to the S+ tier. He's pretty strong in low elo, but finding tons of success in Platinum and higher, peaking at around 52.7% win rate in Diamond. The only other shift we made was in the S+ tier, where we've added Volibear. In the S+ tier, we now have Fiddlesticks, Volibear, and Nunu. Finally, our S tier this patch consists of the same extensive list we covered at the beginning of the patch. Lee Sin, Olaf, Rek'Sai, Shaco, Elise, Warwick, Kayn, Evelynn, Nidalee, Wukong, Zac, and Graves. For a short list of champions that you'll play this patch divided by elo, if you're in low elo, play Master Yi, Vi, Volibear, and Rammus. If you're in high elo, play Volibear, Fiddlesticks, Nunu, and Evelynn. That's it for the jungle, so let's talk about the mid lane next. Our analysts actually did a pretty good job of creating tier lists for the mid lane at the beginning of the patch. We actually don't have too much to talk about here. The only thing they didn't account for was how hard the Conqueror nerfs would hit Talon as well as Cassiopeia. They've been moved to the S tier from the S+ tier. On a side note, Yasuo also got hurt quite a bit by these nerfs, but he's still strong enough to remain an A tier pick. Instead, we've decided to dedicate this mid-patch update to adjusting niche picks in the mid lane since there weren't really that many other adjustments we had to make. We'll talk about those at the end though, so let's follow up on the balance changes really quickly. Cassiopeia's win rate hasn't dropped by much, but the drop she has seen is more likely due to the Conqueror nerfs rather than the magic resistance nerf she received this patch. Because Cassiopeia does cast her E so quickly, she wasn't hurt as much by the nerfs to Conqueror as other champions, but nonetheless, she's still a little bit weaker. We've bumped her down from the S+ tier to the S tier because she's still pretty OP, just not as OP as before. Syndra took a huge hit, Our analyst let you guys know she was going to suffer quite a bit this patch in response to her nerfs, and she absolutely has. She's fallen quite a bit and is sitting in the B tier for now. Our analysts believe that this nerf is one that players will have to get accustomed to. After any nerf, there's always going to be a bit of a shock for most players, but we expect to see her win rate bounce back a little once players have had a bit more time to get used to them. Ryze received some more basic attack damage and magic resistance. Surprisingly, his win rate actually increased a whole percentage point to now be 47% across all ranks. While rather low, we still think this merits him as a B tier pick, and he's going to just sit there for now. Finally, Kog'Maw mid doesn't seem that strong. He's underperforming, but our analysts believe his win rate will climb to around 48 to low 49% as players get more practice on him. We've placed him in the C tier for now. It feels like this just isn't the artillery mage meta, but maybe if games slow down a bit, Kog'Maw can start finding success. Now let's run through the S+ and S tiers. First up, the mid lane's S+ tier consists of Fizz and Vladimir, while the S tier consists of Talon, Cassiopeia, Kassadin, Katarina, Echo, Diana, Zed, Sylas, Galio, Annie, and Nocturne. In regards to these niche picks, we've moved Pyke up into the A tier. He's actually the highest win rate champion in the mid lane, but he's definitely a niche one. Pyke suffers from a lack of wave clear, which is pretty crucial to have. He's a rather risky pick, and the players that are driving his win rate so high are likely ones that have him down to a science. Another niche pick we want to mention is Zilean, who we've moved to the B tier. He's a very uncommon mid laner, but he essentially accomplishes the same thing as support Zilean. However, he's a great draft mix-up as most players expect him to go bot lane. Zilean mid provides decent damage and game-changing utility, thus leading to his 53% win rate in Platinum and higher. The reason we've placed him in the B tier, however, is that his damage can be rather unreliable. He's more of a utility pick for sure, and the fact that he rarely sees play means that players might just not be used to laning against him, and thus they underperform. A final note our analyst left us was that Annie is S tier in both low elo and high elo. Her lowest win rate is around Diamond to Masters at 51.8%, which is still pretty damn good for high elo. Alright, that's it for the mid lane, so let's hop into the bottom lane next. There weren't any massive changes to the bottom lane aside from Aphelios' nerf. In spite of this, our analysts have actually made a significant number of shifts, and we'll talk about those as we show you guys one at a time. First, let's talk about the balance changes. Aphelios got gutted. I saw this coming, and I know most of you guys watching this video also saw it coming. Our analysts brought him down from the S+ tier to the B tier at the beginning of this patch, and that change was pretty accurate. Arguably, I think he could maybe be placed in the C tier, but B tier is acceptable as well. He received an AD nerf, a quality of life nerf, an ultimate nerf, a nerf to his main keystone, and a giant nerf to one item that made him OP. So yeah, Aphelios got kicked off the roof of a building. In spite of this, he's still got some fighting spirit in him and still feels decently strong in the right hands. Kalista lost a decent chunk of her AD per level, and surprisingly enough, her win rate wasn't hit too hard by this. She's a little bit harder to utilize in solo queue, however, because she brings a lot of utility to the table. Utility typically requires some coordination, especially when you're throwing your support at the enemy team. Surprisingly, Kalista players are finding a ton of success with Death's Dance, even in spite of the nerfs. However, this is likely because of the fact that if Kalista is able to reach that item to begin with, the game is probably already over. This is typically her fourth item, meaning that she probably had a successful early game and managed to snowball her lead and eventually reach that point. As a result, she's still remaining in the C tier. Lucian's Q range received a buff. Our analysts thought this would only help him in high elo, but his win rate has increased by nearly a percentage at all ranks. Props to all you Lucian players out there. Lining up that Q isn't very easy, and you're all taking advantage of this buff pretty effectively. He's still not dominating Summoner's Rift just yet, but we believe in you guys. Keep grinding, push your limits, and maybe tweet at Riot for some more buffs. Lucian is staying in the B tier for now. Just like in other roles, Syndra had to be moved down in the bottom lane as well. The mana nerfs hurt her everywhere, and bot lane Syndra almost never gets blue buff, especially if you're on the blue team. There's basically no world where you're able to access it unless you go out of your way and sacrifice waves, which just isn't worth it. Syndra has been moved to the C tier in the bottom lane. The next change we've made to the list is that Twitch has been moved to the B tier. Lane bullies have been getting hit left and right, and this has created some more breathing room for scaling picks like Twitch. He still struggles against picks like Draven, but it is absolutely possible to find success with him, especially if your opponents aren't properly using their power advantages. Finally, we've moved Miss Fortune down to the A tier. While she was a dominant lane bully in the past, long-range champions are seeing more play and lowering her win rate substantially. We're talking about picks like Ashe, Caitlyn, and Jhin. And no surprise there, all those picks are now S tier ones. Small spoiler by the way, but we would have told you guys anyway. Our S Plus tier remains the same as the beginning of the patch with Ezreal and Kai'Sa. However, our S tier now welcomes a new member of Ashe. Ashe's win rate swings pretty substantially between patches, but our analysts believe that the changes to approach velocity affected Ashe quite a bit. While the changes don't affect Ashe, they do affect any teammate on Ashe's team. They can take the rune and benefit heavily from it, especially if she's got an aggressive lane partner. Their life is so much easier when they gain a little more than 7% more movement speed for simply having her on their team. That's a wrap for the bottom lane, so now we'll conclude with our support section. The support section remains the same from the beginning of the patch, aside from one thing. Yuumi has been moved to the B tier. There were only 2 changes to supports this patch, so let's talk about Rakan first. Unfortunately for him, the Guardian nerfs actually hurt more than the compensation buffs he received. His win rate dropped nearly 0.5%, but he's still a very valuable pick for nearly any team composition. Most of his games are played with Xayah as his lane partner, so as long as they're playing together, he's still pretty solid. While our analysts want to keep him as an A tier pick, we've denoted that he belongs at the bottom of it. They're being generous with this placement considering that his win rate falls slightly short of 50%. However, they believe in his incredible utility and mobility and are giving him some extra love. He kinda needs it anyway. Yuumi's nerfs hit her a lot harder than our analysts initially expected, and I'm sure harder than Riot expected as well. As of now, Yuumi is technically speaking the worst support in the entire game. Her win rate tanked, dropping all the way from around 50% to 46% across all ranks. However, her ban rate remains rather high. Across all ranks, it's dropped to around 38%, while in Platinum and higher, it's gone to 50%. While the B tier may also seem generous for Yuumi considering her win rates, her ban rates remain at an all-time high, and once again, our analysts believe this low win rate is partially due to the shock factor of a big nerf. As players grow more accustomed to the changes, our analysts believe that her win rates will increase a little bit. It does feel like Yuumi got hit a little bit harder than expected, so we're actually anticipating minor compensation buffs in the future. We'll keep you guys updated though, as this is purely speculation on our part. For supports, our S Plus tier consists of Blitzcrank, Senna, Soraka, Lulu, and Bard. Our S tier features Thresh, Nautilus, Morgana, Nami, Janna, and finally, Leona. The one pick our analysts want you guys to watch out for is Lulu. Although different, she fills a similar niche as Yuumi. Lulu is an enchanter that buffs up her allies while simultaneously keeping them safe from harm. The way she does so is slightly similar too. Like Yuumi, Lulu can speed up her ally, shield them, and also throw out a slow from her teammates as long as she's shielded them beforehand. Her ultimate acts either as an excellent peeling ability or a decent follow-up on engages by your frontliners. Lulu is basically the new old Yuumi, who's older than Yuumi, and her ban rates are slowly climbing. Try to abuse her as much as you can before she becomes the next target of unprecedented hate. Alright, that's going to conclude this mid-patch update. Thanks so much for watching, guys. We always appreciate your support. I want you guys to check out ProGuides.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. We're always trying to bring you guys the best content, and supporting us helps us do so. Regardless, thanks for watching, and we wish you the best of luck on Summoner's Rift. Good luck out there, guys.